think about Record Store Day? Is this something that's monumentous for vintage vinyl?
Tribal gathering, raising the collective musical flag, and celebrating the idea that music stores in their community can keep alive and perpetuate and further music culture.
Has the decline of record store sales affected you in any kind of way? But how have you guys been able to keep afloat above all of that, especially with music being so digital?
Part of it is serving an incredibly wide community, and the community that we serve is really interested in communicating with each other.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things that was ever written about this store was someone once wrote in St. Louis Magazine that you would not be shocked to see some kid in a chemotherapy haircut talking to some lawyer in a $1,000 suit about John Coltrane in here. And that to us is the way, you know, our corporate motto, which Tom coined, is music is the healing force.
Right.
And to us, if you're community building, having a tribal drum beat is a real important part of community building. St. Louis has always been an incredibly musical community.
We're very conscious of the fact that music can create a neutral zone and a place where all people will come together and be able to, at least for that moment, act as a community.
We were very cognizant when we put the store on Delmar that Delmar, when St. Louis was a legally segregated town, up until 1954 when the law changed, this was a legally segregated town, and Delmar was the dividing line.
Wow.
And we put the store here for all kinds of reasons, but that to us was the primary one. Tom always calls it racial neutral ground. These kinds of changes are glacial. You know, once the legal structure has recognized that the change is necessary, then you know the change will happen. It just takes time. And it's hard to tell people to be patient when they're on the wrong end of that stick.
Yeah.
But the fact is, it's happened. I watch my kids' generation. It is so much better and so much easier. And the prejudices are, A, they'll talk about it, B, they'll joke about it, which is really the key to breaking it.
Yeah.
But beyond all that, you know,
my kids are
one of the great social lubricants is music.
Yep.
And Americans can self-analyze and look at themselves and talk about their shortcomings as well they should. The other thing I hope that Lou and I have done is to counteract what I call cultural amnesia. There's a lot of cultural amnesia that goes on in a city like St. Louis, and it's top down.
Wow.
And by that I mean the people that buy and sell St. Louis every day really don't understand what there is culturally significant about St. Louis. When I say culturally significant, that which could be held up, so to speak, by St. Louis to the world, and St. Louis say, get to this.
Wow.
This is our unique gift. This is what we do. This is what we've produced. And the people that run St. Louis, politically, economically, socially, they, for the most part, never got that, and still don't.
Well, part of it is class and race in this town, which is still a huge factor.
Well, hopefully.
We're just outgrowing it. You know, this is the northernmost southern city.
It is.
Yeah.
There's a. You could talk about this all day long until the cows come home. I mean, there is a certain. As a Southerner, I always thought St. Louis was the most segregated place I'd seen.
Wow.
His family's from Georgetown.
Oh, wow.
Southern.
That's Southern.
And I would say that, and I still say that, the father was a truck driver who voted 3 times for George Wallace whenever he could get a chance to. But as far as separation of races, St. Louis, when I got here,
when we got here, the only storefront we could get had 139 code violations.
Oh, wow.
There was a hole in the
ceiling. Yeah, the whole street was
large
pretty
enough to shove a dead shovel in the room.
Wow.
And the landlord who was the first landlord in the United States to ever have a class action suit brought against him by the federal government because the federal government was accusing him of redlining. It was our landlord.
Wow.
And,
Interesting.
And he was at war with the city, so we had to negotiate a piece that would get us a license to open a business in one of these locations. And the first location was 400 square feet. To give you an idea, the store out here that you just went through is 7,500. The jazz room is 436.
Wow.
So our first store was the size of the jazz room now.
Oh, wow. As a record store now, in the midst of all the digital sales and everything, do you find it hard to get artists to come to your store to perform?
No.
Or is it usually them asking you to come here?
It depends on at what point of the arc of their career they are at. Would Jason Mraz do that this summer when he comes and plays the big barn, outdoor barn? No. Was he willing to do that 7 years ago? Yes.
Okay.
You know, a lot of Jim's job is to be about 2 inches ahead of the curve.
Okay.
So that we'd have bands in here right before their record breaks.
That's very strategic and that's very good.
And we had Linkin Park in here the week before their record went top 10.
Wow.
You know,
And we do that on a really regular basis. Or bands that will have really long legs. That we had the North Mississippi All-Stars here when we just knew them as Jim Dickinson's kids.
Okay.
And now they've got this 10-year franchise they've developed in St. Louis, where when the first time they played here, they were playing for the Door at a club that held 200 people. And part of their building their franchise was our imprimatur, was playing in our store and having 100 or so people stumble on them because they happened to walk in the door that evening. And now they play at the pageant. They play at the big hall in town. And that's a lot of the history of us with bands in here. We put out the first hip-hop records in St. Louis back in 1984.
Oh, really? Like who?
Dangerous D, Charlie Chan, the DJ.
Wow.
Ron.
It was 87.
Ron Butts, G Wiz, produced them for us. We put out the best blues album in the 80s, Tony Bankhead and his Blues Eldorados. Our latest local project is we are the Oliver Sane estate gave us the right to put out a Best of Oliver, which is on vinyl and CD down
Oliver
there.
was probably overall the single most important musician in the urban St. Louis area from 1960 until his demise in 2003.
Oh, wow.
We also have a small reggae label with a very small number of releases, but releases by major artists such as the Roots Radix Band and one of our particular favorites, the Jamaican icon U. Roy. We have 2 releases of his.
American culture really is the world's pop culture, and the best pieces of pop culture in other countries. I travel all over the world. Are actually people trying to do American culture in their own language or in the context of their own culture. And Americans have to remember that we really are this unifying culture.
That is our best foot.
And it's because our culture integrates all of the elements. It's ragtime with an African left hand and a European right hand. That was the melting. And you hear it in every form of music, from gospel music to rock and roll
to jazz, to blues,
to contemporary
classical,
composers. Yeah.
everything.